Hello, Julie here with Just Plain Fun, and today I'm going to show you how to make this block. And if it looks a little familiar, that's because I took this block, which is the 5-strip rail fence block, and duplicated it, cut it in half, and added this strip in the middle of it. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Let's get to it. In order to be able to make this block, we're going to start with actually the 5-strip rail fence block. That is the first one in this series. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to make the 5-strip rail fence block, and then we're going to cut it in half this way and insert this. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and make the 5-strip rail fence block off camera, because we've already done this. And if you haven't seen any of the videos, go to the very first video in this series and go learn how to do the quilt as you piece method and go ahead and make a block. And then when I come back, and then when we get there, it won't be this block that we're going to do. It's actually going to be slightly smaller, more like around 8 inches or so, maybe a little bigger than that. We're just going to go ahead and cut it in half, and I'm going to show you how you can put these strips together. And the only hand stitching that you need to do in order to make this work, to put them together after you cut them in half, you're going to be doing like the magic seam or the burrito roll or whatever you want to call it. I'll show you how to do that. And so let's get started. I am back, and I have gotten the 5-strip rail fence block done, and it is ready for the next step. Now I want to show you something. This one here is really soft and supple. I used almost no glue in this, and but it's really soft, and this fabric is not starched. This one I starched, and so it's definitely a bit stiffer, but that's the only reason why it's stiff. When I wash it, it'll be nice and soft and pliable like this one. So anyway, just thought I'd point that out. Okay, so basically I have a square here that's approximately 10.5 inches. It's bigger than I need it to be. This is a 9.5 inch square, and I do want to cut it down to 9.5 inches. I mean, this instructions in the instructions. And this particular square is 9.5 inches, so I have to make sure that, yes, I do have my 2 inches down the center. It's pretty accurate, and so I want to center it, and I know that I need to have 1 3/4 here, 1 3/4 here on this side, so I just need to move it over a little bit, so that way I know that's centered. And no matter what I do, it doesn't matter if it's centered from this way to this way. So I just want to line this up so that these are even. I don't care that the strips are not going to be the same width in the final block. That's why you can go ahead and use strings, and just as long as you get a square that ends up being around 10 inches or so, you can trim it down to the 9.5. And then by adding this, it's going to add width to the block. It's going to add width this way and this way. So you're going to end up trimming it back down to 10.5. So first off, we're going to trim this and cut it down to 9.5 inches. You could cut it down to 8, but I'm not sure, 100% sure. And so I just want to make sure that it's big enough when we put that in there to bring it back up to 10.5. I'm going to bring in my weight in here so that way it will stay in place better. And make sure I didn't move it, which I did move it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut around the perimeter, and then I'll show you what's going to happen next. And these rotary cutting mats are awesome. And the weight is there just to help keep it in place and keep it from shifting, and to protect my hand from getting hurt. And I've explained that in an earlier video. And plus I'm killing dead quiet space. So there you go. Now this has been trimmed down to size, and now I need to cut it in half diagonally. So you got to decide which way you want up, and I'm going to be cutting it diagonally here, and I got to get the right ruler. Here it is, and now I'm going to go ahead and work on cutting this into the diagonal. And I know it's square, so if I cut it in diagonal, I know it will be right where it needs to be. Now I'm going to rotate this just a little bit for better leverage, because you only get one shot at this. All right. Hold this side down a little bit, and then hold this. All right, now I'm going to show you how to get this together. And this is the tricky part. And no, I don't want the orange up. I want the light blue up. And then this goes in the center. This is going to be a trick. So, see, it's plenty long. And I'm going to keep it this plenty long. I'm going to straddle it, center it, simply because I don't really, you have to allow for it to go into the corners. All right. Let's hope I cut this long enough. I'm pretty sure I did for the final cut. Okay, so I am going to remove my cutting mat. Actually, I'll just put my pressing pad on top. The heat will not go through it when I turn on my iron. Gee, I guess I should have been prepared. The iron will be ready by the time I get this ready. Okay, here I am. So I'm going to turn this just so I can work on it. This goes here, and I use glue. I use a lot of glue. I don't use pins in this method. I do have pins, but I just don't use them. See, I have pins. They're right here. But I just don't use them in this method. Okay. I would be, sometimes I would be putting stay stitching around the perimeter, but I'm not going to bother because I did straight line quilting edge to edge. Okay, and I'm centering this. I'm going to eyeball it. Doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to turn this around so I can see what I'm doing. Basically, I'm lining it up to the edge, and I'm going to glue it in place. This is basically how the quilt as you piece method happens. And I'm going to be doing the burrito roll. To be honest with you, I hope it works. I mean, it worked with a bag that I made that there is a video on how to make. And it's putting the back side of it together with a zipper and all that stuff. And it worked. And the burrito roll, or, when the way you make a pillowcase with the magic seam, it's really, really cool. I'm going to see if I can do that with this. I don't see why I wouldn't be able to. All right. And still have the batting in here. So I'm going to flip this over on the other side and put the orange one on. And I'm going to center that. Put the glue here. So if you've been watching my videos, you know what I'm doing. If you haven't watched my videos, go ahead and watch the first one. That way you'll see how I got to making this particular block with already layered and already quilted. And this is block number 20. So there are 19 other videos. Number 19 basically didn't show you the quilt as you piece method. It just showed you the order in which I put the pieces. And by the way, that order is the same no matter how whatever technique you're making for your quilt. This is quilt as you piece, where you go ahead and as you're adding your pieces to your block, you're layering each piece as well with the batting and the backing, and you're quilting it before you add the next piece. That's traditional quilt as you piece. Quilt as you go is you make your block for the top, you get a solid block or piece block for the back, then you layer them and then you quilt them. This is different. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and sew this seam, and I'll be right back. It's been stitched, and now I'm going to go ahead and set the seam. All right, and the next step is to go ahead and add the batting in. But before I do that, because I don't know exactly what size I need yet, I am going to go ahead and take this. I'm going to open it up, and yes, I stitched all the way to the end simply because I can. But the one thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you are even. So you're going to fold this in half so that you can mark your center. I'm going to iron it down. It's important you mark the center. And you're going to want to use something that you can either, like one of those friction pens or an air-soluble pen, something that's not going to show. Because you want to make sure that this lines up. And it's going to be a little offset because this is going to drop a little bit because of the space that this is taking up. That's to be expected. So, I mean, I'm eyeballing it and it looks pretty straight to me, but I want to be sure. So, let's take this. That looks almost that looks almost like it's on center. Anyway, so we know that we're going to take our measurement, and this is 13 inches from end to end. Okay, so half of 13. Oh, pencil won't come out. Okay, this will work. So I'm just going to mark the center for reference, and we have 13, so that would be 6.5. All right, and this will come out eventually. But I'm also going to fold it in half. And I have to make sure that I'm centering. You know how I normally don't use pins for this? I'm going to use a pin just to find my spots that I need to fold on. Nothing more than that. Just so I can find my center. Not to hold it there. Close enough. Okay, now, got that. And I'm going to fold this in half and make a crease. Yeah, I could have finger pressed it. Okay, put the pin back. All right. And that does not line up with my mark. So, do I trust the fold or do I trust my mark? Maybe in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter because this is going to be trimmed down. And this will work. Okay. Well, actually, it does matter. Okay. Make my mark here. Now I'm going to find the center of this, which should also be 6.5. Well, actually, it's going to be longer than that because this is not stitched hidden in the seam allowance. So we're going to measure this, and we have 13.25. It should be close enough. So 6. Well, we can just fold that in half and that'll work. All right, so I have my centers, and I'm going to fold this down. Let's mark the back side too so I can see what I'm doing. And that air-soluble pen will disappear within a few days, if not a few hours. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and glue this together and stitch it. And try to keep the glue inside the seam allowance. And pull this forward. And glue it, hold the heat down. And the way this magic seam works is you're going to end up having to turn it inside out at some point. So that's why I'm showing you how it's done. I'm hoping it works. Okay, so I'm going to go take it. I'm going to reline it up so I can see it. All right, now it's lined up. The heat should set it. I'm going to take it to a sewing machine and so that I can see what I'm doing, stitch on this side, 1/4 inch. I'm using scant 1/4 inch seam allowances throughout. Okay, I'll take it and be right back. All right, so I've done the stitching, and now it's time to figure out what size batting I need. So what we're going to do here is we're going to press this open so that the seam goes to the inside. So the burrito roll will work, it'll work, but it's going to be really, really hard to turn it inside out. But I'm going to give it a go. And then you'll be able to see it here, see if it works. Hopefully it'll work. Okay, so what you're going to do here is, I haven't put this batting in yet, but I will, because I need to cut it down to size. All right, I'm going to take the ruler. I've got so many rulers around here. All right, we're going to measure the ruler. I have 1.5 inches. So we're going to go and cut this down to 1.5 inches. Let's make sure it's long enough. It's definitely long enough. So we're going to cut this down, and I'm going to fold it in half to make it easier for me to cut in half. Well, cut it down to 1.5 inches. This is a 3-inch ruler, so I'm going to cut it down to 1.5 inches. And I know I have my rotary cutter here somewhere. There it is. Okay. Yes, the little piece is waste. I hate doing that. You actually really do. But it can be, maybe it might be able to be incorporated into crumbs. So one of the blocks that I'm going to plan on doing takes advantage of all the little crumbs that are happening because of this quilt. And I'm just going to throw them together in this method, doing the crazy patch type of thing. So I'm going to put this in here, and I'm going to stitch it to one side. Whew. And then I'm going to take it to the machine and see if I can't, well, maybe I'll just stitch it. Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll stitch this to one side, and then the other side I can tack it down. I just can glue it down. It'll hold. It'll be fine. Okay, so I'm going to go to the machine and do my zigzag stitching here. I'll be right back. Okay, so I have it stitched on, zigzag, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch these together just like this, using somewhat of a loose zigzag stitch, and it should still work in order to be able to tuck it down inside the seam. So I'm going to go ahead and to the machine and just stitch this edge together like this. It should open up like that, I'm hoping. All right, so it is stitched. Can barely see it, but it is there. See the little bit of stitching there? So here's the moment of truth. Let's see if my idea worked. It actually did. So that way I've got my batting in place, and I didn't even glue it in place. I'm going to be doing some quilting. So the next step here, and hopefully I can turn it inside out. If I can't, I will take it out and do the foldy thing, you know, fold it here and put it across. But I'm going to try to go ahead and do this. Now, I think a wider strip would absolutely positively work. But I decided not to do that. I wanted to try a 2.5 inch strip. So let me go ahead and get this prepared. I can't believe that worked. I cannot believe that worked. Okay, let's set this seam. Set this seam. I seriously can't believe that this worked. Okay. See, it should, yes, it overlaps a 1/2 inch. So if this works and I'm able to turn it inside out, there's no hand stitching. Okay. So the way you do this, you turn it around. Nope, this is not going to work. It's because I stitched the batting down. So what we're going to do at this point, we're going to have to, if you don't mind stitching it down and having top stitching, then you still don't have to hand stitch it. But it worked. I mean, burrito roll didn't work, but this worked. It won't work because of the way I stitched this down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and fold this under 1/4 inch, and then we're going to top stitch it over here. And I'm going to do that on machine, and I'm going to top stitch both sides, and then I'm going to quilt it. All right, so let me fold this down. I'm going to go fold this down at my big ironing board. I'll be right back. Okay, what I did is I glued this down so it would stay put, and then this will just cross over to here. And again, I'm going to glue it down, but before I glue that down, I'm going to apply glue to this, just so it helps keep it in place. And then I'll bend it, fold it over, and glue that down in place. Take it over to the sewing machine and top stitch right here. I would prefer myself to do it by hand so it looks like this, but I'm going to top stitch both sides so it'll look good. And then I'm going to do my quilting like I did here. It's just that it'll go down this way. All right, so let's get this show on the road. Flip this back. Grab my glue stick. Now this glue stick is completely washable and non-toxic and all that good stuff, but completely washable, so it will wash out. And this is Elmer's school glue, and that will come out also. I don't use the purple glue stick because until you wash it, the purple color comes back when it gets hot. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this down. Actually, you're better off gluing the fabric and not the batting, because it makes a mess out of the glue if you put it on the batting. And at the same time, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of liquid glue on the seam. And no, it does not gum up your machine, and it does not interfere with your machine in any way. This is the way I've been making quilts now for, since 2019. But, well, the glue part. I've been making quilts. Actually, I started sewing when I was 7 years old, by hand. And then when I was 11 years old, my mother started teaching me how to use a sewing machine. So, and you know, through my teenage years, through high school, and through the time period when my children were small, I was making my own clothes and making some of their clothes. Not all of them, but some of them. The special stuff, the dresses. You know, I had a daughter and I had 2 sons and a stepson, but I made clothes mostly for me and my daughter. My boys weren't interested. Of course, I made stuff for them when they were really, really little, before they cared. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this to the sewing machine. It's too bad the burrito roll didn't work, but that's okay. I'm not doing any hand stitching, and this works. And I think it looks pretty cool. And yes, it's definitely supposed to be offset like this. That was planned. It just makes it weird. So that's why I think strip piecing, where the strips are smaller and narrower, would actually look more cool. And maybe even if you piece this strip to make 2 or 3 strips down the center, would be cool. But I'm going to go ahead and stitch this down here first, and then I'll top stitch here, and then I'll do my 2 quilting lines, and I will be right back. And by the way, I've already tested this on my 10.5-inch square, and it's exactly 10.5 inches. So the only trimming I need to do are for the corners. And so 9.5 is what you have to cut it down to make this work. If you cut it down to 10, that works too. But you don't want to cut it down to 8 or 9. It won't work. Okay, I'll be right back. All stitched and ready for its final trim. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the ironing pad and bring over my 10.5-inch ruler. Take a look at this. And it's kind of like perfect. So 9.5 was the way to go. I cannot believe how well that's lined up. I'm going to go ahead and put my weight on it, and I'm going to go ahead and trim these off. I'm going to start like this. Okay. Whoa! Try not to cut yourself. All right, and then over to this side. Okay, and this block is finished. All right, so here's the back side, or the front, whatever you want. And this is the other side. I happen to really, really like it. And yes, it's offset, but that's part of the charm. Now imagine a whole bunch of these put together in one big quilt. And you can use strings. You could absolutely use strings. So you make your block, cut it down to, make your initial block like this, cut it down to 9.5, cut it in half, join it together. And I've actually done this join with the split chevron block as well, but I didn't do the stitching like I did in here on both sides. It works to do it on both sides. So this is a good way to do that. And I top stitched it. I think it looks pretty good. All right, and I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you subscribe. Well, yeah, if you want to. If you want to see the, be notified, don't forget to hit the ring, hit the bell and turn on notifications in your account, and then you'll be notified, not by email, but you'll be notified, perhaps, the next time I post a video about this. And if you register at our website, there should have been a secret code earlier in this video that you can take over to the website to claim 20,000 points, and then you can purchase this for 20,000 points or $1.99. If you don't want to be a member, you can just buy it. At the end, though, I'm going to publish the quilt, and the quilt itself will also be $1.99. So you can wait. You can wait until then and get it all in the book, because the book will be published in paperback. But the book in paperback will not be $1.99. I don't know what it will be. But it will be available on Amazon when I get it done. And it won't be done until I am completely done with all these, and then it might take a week or 2 or 3 or 4 or a month or 6 or 7 or whatever. I'll get it done when I get it done, and of course I'll let you know about it. All right, until next time, thank you for watching and have a great day. Goodbye.